everyone. And welcome to La Chicharra. I know, I can't roll my R's that well. This is the first of what we were hoping is a quarterly storytelling event here in Key West called La Cucaracha Chronicles, or the Cucaracha Chronicles. Have anyone been to a storytelling event before, a story slam? No? Yeah, a couple? Okay. So basically what a story slam is, or a storytelling event, we give people a theme, and they've got about 6 to 8 minutes to tell a story on that theme. So tonight's theme is It Changed My Life. Now, the thing about the Story Slam events and getting these together is it's got to be the brainchild of someone, and tonight's event really is the brainchild of Yaniz. And he was wanted to do one of these for a very long time. And we wouldn't be here tonight were it not for the success of the story readings of Rita Troxell's book, A Home at the End of the World. So a huge shout out to Rita and her crew that she's got here tonight. So now, if you look at your programs, you'll notice that in the second act, we have split into 2 acts this evening because we've got some really emotional stories. In the second act, there is an audience member. Fun thing about Story Slams is that we are giving the audience an opportunity to tell a story. So, following Tony's story, he is going to take off that hat and he is going to put it in the very back near the door, and there are going to be little cards next to that. So throw your name into the hat, and at the beginning of the second act, we will pull a name out of that hat, and you could be telling a story in the second act today. So, friends, thank you all for being here tonight. We could not be more excited that this was a sold-out event here at the studios. You'll also see that any proceeds from ticket sales on this event will be going to 2 local charities, MARC House and the FKSPCA. And the last huge thank you is to the studios of Key West. You have an amazing team. You have the most amazing venue in town. And we could not be here without you and the help from all of you on your team. So thank you so much for that. All right, kids, buckle up, because our first storyteller is Tony Yaniz.
You know what I find amazing? We're sitting home and she goes, I hate public speaking. But it's like the Energizer Bunny, right? Once you turn that thing, fuck, you can't stop. So, I kind of wanted to do this format. Instead of going with a lot of introductions to each speaker, I didn't want to take their thunder away. So the way we'll do this, I'm going to tell you a story, we'll introduce the next person, and we'll move on down the line. There's been a slight change in the program, but I think we can modify it, and I think you'll understand why. We'll talk a little more about that. Again, stories are wonderful, so I'm not going to get into all the BS that goes with it. But I'm going to tell you a story about a shy young Cuban boy. In Cuba, I was the golden boy, man. I mean, my father was a well-known journalist. I was cocky. All my clothes had to be pressed. I mean, I'm talking 7, 8 years old. And as a matter of fact, my father had already told me at 13 he was going to take me to the Chinatown in Havana to the Teatro Shanghai, the Shanghai Theater, which is a well-known whorehouse, and that's the way they broke you in Havana. And then we were well-to-do. We had money. I was cocky. I was well-got perfect. And then the Fidel Castro bomb hit. And all of a sudden, we got in a plane and went to live in Wynwood in Miami, when Wynwood was a blue-collar Puerto Rican neighborhood because there was no Cubans in Miami back then. And we went to live there, and from a life of luxury, there was 7 of us in an apartment. And the way it worked out with a chicken was Dad got a breast, I got a breast, my brother got this. And by the time I got to Grandma got the neck and the ass of the chicken. That was all there was left. So I think that gives you an idea of the economy. So I lost some of my stride, and then of course there was a different language, and I didn't like my name because my name is Jorge Antonio, and white people don't know how to say Jorge or pronounce. Back then they didn't. Anyways, so I became a fat, but that's another story for another time. And so we're all living in poverty, and my confidence is gone. I'm not cocky anymore, and then I go to Robert E. Lee Junior High School, and I was talking to my brother Clayton Lopez, and I mentioned Robert E. Lee. He goes, "You went to Robert E. Lee?" Robert E. Lee had that kind of a reputation, man, and I was like, oh God. And I got to Robert E. Lee Junior High School, and just about then I got acne. No, not just acne, I got blanket acne. So add to that, going into this high school where everybody was a badass, I was really a shy young Cuban boy. And so at some point or another, one of my homeboys from Wynwood, Bobby Ramos, who's now Raul Ramos y Sanchez, he's now a well-known author, Cuban author living in Ohio. So him and I got together at Robert Lee Junior High School, and he says, "Hey, bro, let's join the band." Join the band, yeah. Do you like music? Yeah, I sing all the time in the shower. Yeah, drive my old man crazy. Yeah. He says, "Well, let's go join the band, man." I said, "Don't you?" Yeah, I said, "Yeah. I want to play the saxophone." You know, guys who play the saxophone get laid. Flat out, you know, dark glasses, look, Bill Clinton, right? So you get laid, right? You get laid when you play the saxophone. I'm going to go play the sax when we get down there. And, of course, all the saxophones are gone, so I'm bummed out. So I go to my dad and I go, "Dad, I need $12 to rent a saxophone." And he goes, "Screw you." So anyway, so my mom bugged him enough. He gives me the $12. And Saturday morning, me and my other buddy, Rolly the Armas, decide that we're going to go down. I was going to rent the sax, man. And when we get to the place, it's closed. So, man, what are we going to do for 4 hours? He said, "Well, you know, let's get on the bus. It's a nickel. We'll go downtown. We'll get that early bird bowling prices, and we'll bowl a couple of games, and you'll be fine." Well, didn't figure out the tax, didn't figure out things. By the time I get back to get my saxophone, I was 75 cents short. And the guy said, "What happened?" And I told him what happened. And he said, "Son, I think there's a lesson here, even more important than the saxophone." I said, "Okay." So on top of that, at insult to injury, I go home. My father says, "Where's the goddamn saxophone?" So I tell him the story. He says, "Give me the goddamn money." So he takes the 11.25 away from me. So Monday morning, I go to school, and there is Bobby Ramos, and he says, "Come on, cousin, where's the sax?" And I tell him the whole story. "Well, come on, play a different instrument." I said, "Man, I ain't playing no French horn or tuba, no shit like that. Those guys never get any action, right?" He said, "Yeah, okay, all right. So come on, brother, come on down there with me." So I said, "I ain't playing shit, but I'm going with you because, you know, it's my only buddy there." So we go back into the band room and stuff, and the band director comes out and he goes, "Hey, did you get the sax?" "No." He says, "Well, what other instrument would you like to play?" I said, "I don't know." And this is a true story, and I have Dr. Fred Troxel here, so maybe he can shed some light. The guy says to me, "What instrument do you want to play?" "Hang on, open your mouth." He says, "Trombone." Right? Next girl comes up, open the mouth, he goes, "Clarinet." I said, "That's the one." So trombone, right? And another group of musicians that never gets laid, trombone. So they hand me this trombone, it sticks a little bit, and it's all dinged up and shit. And I'm like, "Man, I ain't playing no trombone. I ain't playing no trombone." And then behind me I hear, "Hey, are you going to be in the band with me?" And there is Jackie. Blonde hair, pixie cut, blue eyes, little bubble butt, beautiful little gold anklet on her ankle, right? The queen of homeroom, who had never even looked in my direction, taps me and says, "Are you going to be in the band?" And I went, "Yeah." She says, "Well, what are you going to play?" And I go, this thing here." So anyways, I ended up being a trombone player. And so, you know, we're practicing, we're doing pretty good at stuff. By the way, any musicians? Anybody that dabbles in music a little bit here and there? I played trombone for 2 years. I can't read a note of music. I played by ear. Obviously, my career didn't take me very far. So all of a sudden, Robert E. Lee, towards the end of the year, they're going to do the annual band concert. Man, the annual band concert, and they gave us these green coats with epaulets and brass button, and we had a thing with a feather. Wow, man. My mama got white pants for me, a Salvation Army, and some white shoes, and I was ready to rock. So they play a couple of numbers, and now we got a trombone crew. That's such and such. So we march out to the front, you know, and I'm sitting here, and right before I went on stage, I was so afraid of the sticky valve. Anybody knows that I kept putting slide oil on the trombone. Slide oil. And Bobby kept saying, "Bro, you got slide oil coming out the spit." But no, it's sticking. Oh God, I don't want to stick up there in front of her. I'm sticking right. Okay. So now the trombone, we get ready to play. And the song is called "Shouting Lights at Trombone." And the way it goes, bum, 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 right. So I'm getting ready to start. Let me see if this shit's working. There goes the slide. You saw that coming, right? Okay. There goes the slide, and it lands in the second row. And everybody's laughing at me, and I must have turned 14 colors. I said, shit, if I had any self-confidence, it's over now, right? So my buddy Bobby says, "Bro, you got to go get your slide." March down the stairs, go down the thing, pick up the slide, come back, put the thing in, and I take a bow. And when I take a bow, the place goes crazy. They're clapping for me. Anyways, we play the number and we nail it. We absolutely nail the number. And as I'm walking back to my seat, Jackie slaps me on the ass and says, "Nice." I said, "Yeah, well, that's great, Jackie." Right? So that night, from the time I picked up the slide to the time I left that stage, so there was some kind of a seed that got planted there, man. It wasn't like one of those dramatic changes like you win the lottery or your grandfather dies or something. But there was a seed planted there, and all of a sudden I started thinking, man, maybe I can get my game going a little bit here. Monday morning, I show up at school. Everybody's patting me on the back. The girls are kissing me on the cheek. All of a sudden, I'm a goddamn superstar. But now that seed is starting to grow and it's starting to take root. And all of a sudden, I realized, you know what? It's better to be brash than to be shy. So all of a sudden, I'm walking in class late on purpose and shit, and I'm starting to grow with it. And so I look back on my life and I go, you know what? It's amazing what happened that night. It's amazing that a sticky trombone, too much oil, a gorgeous blonde, and a friend totally changed my life. And here's what happened. Bobby Ramos and I have been friends for 60 years. And that night was the beginning, the genesis of making me the Louisville guy that I am today. I apologize for that. And oh, by the way, Jackie did invite me to her summer pool party, and oh yeah, I went. Thank you so much. I just want to say this real quick, and I'll promise I won't sit here for a long time. Storytelling is the oldest form of communication there is. The whole idea that Becky and I've been working on, and Rita's been working at it from different times, and Richie's been working at it with his book, is to get people to tell their stories. So I hope that this is a catalyst. This is the fire that gets you going. Anyways, as my better half said, and yeah, Becky, we did get married. Everybody knows. It's now official, okay? It's a tough shit. Okay. Don't tell anybody. Anyways, we went and signed the paper, big deal. My sister was the notary. But, as Becky said, I have been talking this for years. I'm a really good idea guy. I get about 1,500 a day, and about one a year come through because I need people, typically women, by the way, like Becky and like Rita and stuff like that, and Daisha, who's come on board, the beast, to make shit happen, right? But I got to tell you something, man. The fact that Rita came up here and that she wrote the book and she had us write stories, and then she came up here and she put on a show, as I said that night. Everything that's happening from here on forward on this venue, I owe to her because she's been a wonderful author, an actor, an entrepreneur, a great speaker for our community, and quite frankly, if you'll come up, Rita Troxel is the one that lit my crack pipe and got it going. Thank you very much.
So, yes, I started working on this book 17 years ago, and all these people wrote stories, and when I retired, I said, that's it. I retired. I have got to finally, make this book. And there are a lot of great stories in it. I'll tell you, when Tony Yaniz's stories showed up in my mailbox, this is before Facebook and before, all of the easy internet stuff, in a brown envelope, these two stories showed up in my mailbox. And I read the stories, and I was like, can I put these in a book without the book being in a brown paper bag? I don't know. But they're pretty great stories. So I'm going to tell you a story tonight that is not in the book. It is from back in the day, though. And I don't know if anybody remembers or knows. Don't have to remember, you can still know. Father Tony.
Oh, yeah.
He was the priest at St. Bede's on Flagler. He is one of the first friends Roddy Brown and I had as a friend. And he invited us to dinner one night at St. Bede's. We were at the rectory. And he says to me, go over there to the sink and, clean up the lobster. Well, I'm a Jewish girl from D.C. I don't eat no lobster. And I look at these things in the sink, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with these. Well, he thought I was the biggest prima donna in the world, I guarantee you. And he told many people that story, but I didn't know what to do with that lobster. So, it's just, you know. We go forward to April of 1986. My daughter Jessie had just turned 5. My husband was out of town. My friend Linda Cucharra, who was in the Corps de Ballet of the American Ballet Theater, was over at the house, and I was making dinner. My mojo chicken, cabbage and garlic and all this stuff, recipe I made up. And I get a phone call when you had landlines only and 5 numbers. You only had to dial 5 numbers. And I get a phone call from my brother-in-law in Virginia. And he says to me, is Tony over there? Yeah, and I said, no, Tony's not here. And he said, okay, well, when he gets there, tell him to call me. And just as he says that, Tony is pulling in. Tony, your father, Tony. And I said, oh, wait a minute. He just pulled up. He goes, that's okay, just tell him to call me. And he hangs up. Like, okay. So Tony comes in the house, and I said, oh, you know, cooking dinner, Linda's here. She was watching TV in my bedroom with Jessie. And you want to stay for dinner? And he said, you know, I think you can hear me over that plane. He says, yeah? I'm holding. Good? Okay. He says, no, I have something to tell you. And I said, okay. And he said, Roddy died. And I started, I was laughing. I said, yeah, very funny. That's great. Okay, so do you want dinner? And he says, no, Rita, Roddy died. And I went, yes, sure. You know, Linda, Tony's here. You know, the chicken's almost done. Do you want dinner? And Tony starts laughing because I'm laughing, and he doesn't know what to do. And he says, looks at me, and he said, no, I'm not kidding. Roddy died. So it sunk in. And I, of course, was stunned. But the first thing I thought about was my daughter, and I'm like, she's back there in the bedroom, and I don't want to ruin her life. So I'm like a wind-up toy. I mean, I'm such a nervous wreck. And Linda comes out of the bedroom because she can tell something's going on. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to tell her. Maybe I'll tell her in the morning. I'll just let her have her life at least one more day, as it is. And, you know, Tony, they're looking at me like, you know, you're a crazy person. You can't do that. And I said, okay, well, a couple hours. I'll tell her later. I'll tell her in a couple hours. And they were like, you gotta go tell her. And so I walked back to the bedroom, and she was watching TV, and I said, Jessie, I have something to tell you. And she turned around and looked at me, and she said, my daddy's dead, isn't he? Oh. And I was, of course, surprised. And I sat down in the bed with her, and I said, yeah, he is. So everything is kind of a blur after that. I don't think we ate dinner. Maybe Jessie ate dinner. I think I turned off the oven, I assume. I was just like pacing, walking, pacing. I wanted to get in the car and drive to Richmond right that night. And Tony was like, you can't do that. We'll fly there tomorrow. We'll all fly there. And so the next day, I mean, I didn't sleep that night at all. And so the next day, Tony had made the arrangements. We went to the airport. We all got on the plane. And Tony had talked to the priest at the Catholic Church in Richmond. And he was going to officiate, I guess. I don't know if that's the right term. proceed over the funeral, the services. So the three of us flew up there, and I just remember getting to my parents' house, and I just wanted to lay down in the guest room and curl up in a little ball in the dark, and that's it. And that's it. I didn't want to deal with anything. But, of course, I knew I couldn't go down that rabbit hole. I would never come out from that. But there's ritual for a reason. You know, you have to do things. You have to go pick out a casket, and they would push me in one direction and another direction, and I was just like this little wind-up toy, and I did whatever I was told to do. So picked out the casket, signed papers, did all of that stuff. So the viewing, I guess, was that next day. I'm not really sure how it went, and their friends had flown in from all over, and everybody was there, and my mom and dad were sitting, in one of the chairs, and my stepsons, Sean and Scott, and Jessie. She goes over to my dad, her Zeta, in Yiddish. Zeta is grandfather. And she says, "Zeta, my daddy is dead," and just collapses on him. It broke my heart. Then my younger stepson, Scott, came over to me, and he says, Rita, they called me Rita, Jessie wants to go in and be alone with Roddy in the room. I said, okay. So he took her in, and after a few minutes he comes out and he says, I think you need to go in there. We had brought some tomatoes up from his tomato plants and a gardenia up, and she had placed the gardenia. Scott says, she's trying to put the tomato in his mouth so he will come to life. So I go in there and I, get her down, and I was like, this is not good. And then she says, can we get some batteries and put it in? Like, remember those Teddy Ruxpins, those little animated bears? She was sure that we could put batteries in, and he wouldn't be alive, but he would still be there, like this moving teddy bear. I was like, no, we can't do that. It was a very nice service and everything. And then we're on our way home, and I have this box of ashes, and we're on the plane, and the plane then used to go from Richmond to Raleigh, Durham, Miami, Key West. And in Raleigh, Durham, you got off the plane, and you had, 30 minutes. You got off the plane, then you came back on, you left your stuff. So I left everything. We got off the plane, we came back onto the plane, and the box is not there. I'm like, oh my God, somebody's going to get a big surprise if they think they just took something home. And the stewardess, back then they were stewardesses, so the stewardess came over. She said, no, I have the box, and here's the box. So we made it home. We had another big funeral procession down here with the Junkanews, and it was a nice Key West funeral. People would come over to the house to see me, and I would be very upset. And Jessie said to me, Mom, you can't cry when people are here because they want to leave. It makes them uncomfortable. And I said, well, they're friends. They will get used to it. So time goes on, and you are part of the world, and you have things to do. And I have a 5-year-old, and a couple months passes, and I said, oh my God, I was such a mess. I am so much better now. 3 months later, I'm like, what was I thinking that I was okay? I wasn't okay. I'm okay now, but now I'm okay. And that went on for over a year. just slowly getting better. One day I was outside the kitchen door and I just had this realization that I had no idea who I was. And I realized that everything I thought about myself was my reflection in Roddy's eyes. And here I was, 35 years old, and it's like, who am I? What do I want to do? What do I want to be? And, you know, slowly but surely, I became, I became me. And, but it sneaks up on you. I mean, at the oddest times, I was at the movie theater maybe 15 years after Roddy died. And there's a movie, I think it was called American Beauty. And the husband dies. And the wife is in the closet and smells. She gathers his clothes together, takes a big, you know, whiff of his smell, his scent, his essence. And, you know, smell is a really super strong thing. And it was just a flashback to me not wanting to wash the sheets or the pillowcases. And I started to cry. And I cried. And I cried. And the movie was over. And the entire theater left. And my friends I was with left, except for, they were waiting outside, except for one friend. He stayed with me. He didn't know what to do with me. I could not stop crying. And finally, I got my act together and got up and left. And I'll just say I have a wonderful life. I have a wonderful husband, Fred Troxel. I have wonderful friends and a wonderful community. And the takeaway, if anything, is, you know, every single day of your life is once in a lifetime. Every day. I now have to introduce somebody. I have to introduce Richie Gomez. And he's going to come up here, and his story is fishing and smuggling just every day in Key West.
As Tony Soprano once, no, as Tony Montana once said, say hello to the bad guy. Want me to repeat that, or you got it? Say hello to the bad guy. So listen, I'm going to read you a little introduction because it's important to the story. Then I'm going to read you a conclusion because it's important to the ones not with us anymore. So here's the introduction. Oh, by the way, the greatest thing about this story, no, the craziest thing about this story is it's true. I changed the names. I gave everybody the nickname that they grew up with. They're all conks like me. So I won't use their names because I want to protect the not so innocent. So here we go. Introduction of this period of time that to me was my greatest period of time. In the 70s and early 80s, the Keys were experiencing the gold rush. Unlike the gold rush of the 1800s, we weren't prospecting for precious metals. Our gold came in burlap sacks and floated in the ocean along the stream. Our gold pulled into the channels and landed on beaches up and down the Keys. Sometimes it got caught up in the ebb and flow of the tides and wound up tucked under the mangrove forests around all of the Keys. Our gold had more than one nickname, but the one that stuck was Square Grouper. In 1976, I was 19 years old and full of piss and vinegar. That's how my grandfather described me. I was an ambitious boy, but not in the normal sense. I was a high school dropout with no aspirations of college. My dream, no, my reality was to become a smuggler. This was the mindset when I became a commercial fisherman in order to become a smuggler. In the meantime, I would chase a square grouper as I waited for the chance to get to the big show. Back then, fishing led to smuggling opportunities. The two went hand in hand. With that in mind, I found a job on a lobster boat by the name of the Mary D. Not only was the captain a fisherman, he was also a smuggler. In fact, the fish house was owned by smugglers. And the boats that fished out of the fish house were smugglers. Or they were wannabe smugglers. Get the picture? It was always about the right place at the right time, and I found myself firmly entrenched in that place and that time. As I waited, I got busy learning the trade, and in my spare time, I went on every dead-end hunt for the elusive square grouper that I could. Most of them were fruitless, but I figured if I persevered, eventually I would get lucky. On this particular day, I knew that things would be different. The intel was solid, and the conch telegraph was screaming loud and clear, "This is not a drill." And I was feeling lucky. So, Potato Head and I were at the fish house early that morning. And we're doing what we do on an early morning in between trips. We're building traps and we're repairing traps. So as we're sitting there working, drinking our café con leche, I could hear, Bill, you have a sip of water? So I could hear, so anyway, I could hear my friend Flea's, yes, Flea is his nickname. I could hear his Ford Falcon with the noisy muffler before I saw him. So he comes screaming down the road to the fish house, slams his brakes in front of us, big cloud of smoke comes up, and he jumps out, followed by that cloud of smoke. He says, "Come on, man, we gotta go." I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "There's square groupers are floating all over Sawyer Key. It's time to go. This is the real deal." So, am I going to build traps, or am I going to go on another goose chase? I picked the goose chase. So Potato Head and I and Flea are getting the boat ready, and here comes the Alfonso brothers, Papito and Boy. Boy's another nickname. So Boy and Papito aren't going to take no for an answer. Next thing you know, all of us are headed to Sawyer Key. About 30 minutes later, if anybody's been to Sawyer Key, you know there's a white dome structure that sits on the west end of that key. And as we're approaching, I can see that structure. So I don't want to go through the channel that will lead me to the north side on that side, because there's scientists that use it for research. There's always a caretaker on the boat. So I figured, let's go around the east end. We're going to sneak up on them. So we come around the east end through the channel, and one thing I noticed when I'm coming through the channel that will lead us to the north side, I noticed a runabout sitting there with a 25 horsepower Evinrude on the back. I think I recognize it, but I'm not sure. Anyway, we're all excited to get to that north side because that's where they've been floating all night long. So we pop out of the channel, and as I look to the west towards the dome home, I see an unbelievable sight. There's got to be at least 20 plus boats of that time. Checkmates, Glasstrons, Rally Sports, Boston Whalers. They're lined up along Sawyer Key. So much for sneaking up on them, right? So some of the boats are milling about, looking for a place to jump up on the island. Some of them are already anchored up. Now, the other thing I see that's truly amazing, there's men So one thing about Sawyer Key, just so you know, it's rocky for about 50 yards out. It's not like Snag Point where you could just go run up to the key. You have to anchor your boat outside the rocks and walk up to the island. So anyway, one thing I noticed is also unbelievable. I see a bunch of conch boys headed for the island. Then I see a bunch of conch boys coming back. Now all the conch boys coming back have bales over their head or across their shoulders. Payday, right? So I'm looking for a place, we're all looking for a place to anchor the boat to go and get our stuff, right? We're going to get our shit. So as we're moving about, I see my friend Hobo. Hobo's in his checkmate, and he's digging around the bottom. I said, Mira, vamos pa allí. Let's go see what Hobo's up to. Let's go see what he could tell us. So as I approach Hobo, his partner, Pots and Pans, is walking up. Pots and Pans has a bale over his head. So we pull up to Hobo, and Hobo's pulling a spear gun out. I said, what the hell is this? So Pots and Pans throws the bale on the boat. He says, Hobo, give me the other spear gun. So I say the only thing I could think of, I say, what the hell is going on? He says, that son of a bitch caretaker is shooting at us. I said, I don't hear nothing. So in that moment, I hear dogs. And I look towards the beach, and there's two Doberman pinchers chasing a bunch of cock boys into the bushes. There's a caretaker, I assume. He's got a shotgun, and he's shooting over their heads. Hobo and Potts head for the beach, cocking their spear guns, and the last thing I remember Hobo saying is, if that son of a bitch Doberman comes near me, I'm going to shoot him between the eyes. So I finally decide, I say, listen, boys, this is getting a little dangerous. You sure we in the right place? So we finally decide that we're going to go milling back towards that east side channel because, in our opinion, the tide is going to be bringing bales in and bringing bales out through the channel. So we cut back along all those boats, along all those conch boys bringing bales out, and I'm saying, man, I hope I'm making the right decision. So we pull into the channel, and here comes Flaco out of the bushes, Flaco with his big gold tooth and the gold chain. He's throwing a bale in that dinghy with the 25 horsepower. And he says, Oye, primo, I tried to get y'all's attention, but you came through here too fast. He said, Mira, I don't know what's going on over here, pero aquí, we got them all to ourselves. So he throws that bale on top of the other two he already has. And he pulls his boat out into the channel, cranks up his little 25. He says, Oye, Mira, I stopped right over there. If you all go that way, I promise you're going to find some more. So me and Potato Head and Papito, we jump in the water right now. Flea and Boy, they ride the boat around the bushes, around the mangroves on the backside. 20 minutes later, we got 4 bales in the boat, and we're headed home with the same cheese-eating grin that Flaco left with. So now the conclusion. Hold that 1 second. Almost, Tony. Okay.
Don't ding him. Don't ding him.
Make it get the hook.
Don't ding him. You need glasses?
Give me one of those back. All right, so it took us 2 weeks to dry the weed using humidifiers and fans in a 2-bedroom apartment in Stock Island. Occasionally after dark, we would spread some of the weed out underneath the trailer to air it out. But we had to be careful, though, because not all the rats had tails. The first adventure into the world of the dark penny, as we gave it that nickname way back when, changed the trajectory of my life forever. The success convinced me that I was on the right path and that all my dreams were possible. 2 years later, in 1978, I was on my way to Colombia on an old wooden shrimp boat by the name of the Miss Betty. This was my first mission, but it would not be my last. I have so many memories of that period of time. I hold them like a shrine to the long ago boy that I was. On some nights, especially after a couple stiff drinks, I sit back and watch them as they drift behind my eyes where all memories live. I grab at the corners as they drift past. Each memory holds a special place in my heart, the good ones as well as the bad. On any given night, I grab one and wrap it around me like a blanket on a cold night. I pulled this particular memory down on more than one occasion. Not just because it was my first taste of the gold that I had been chasing. It's also because of the characters that were with me. Some of them are gone now. Little did they know that they would be trapped forever in yesterday as the rest of us moved on to tomorrow. For me, part of them will always be alive, trapped in that special time when we were full of piss and vinegar. I dedicate this story to 4 old friends that left too soon, now trapped inside a memory. Flea, Boy, Flacco, and Pots and Pans. And to all those tweeny-something conch boys that got their first taste of the gold nugget at Sawyer Key in 1976. Thank you.
Are you having a good time? Just real quickly, we want to do this again probably in July, and the theme is going to be My Roots. We're also looking forward to something in Fantasy Fest pursuant to some Rita told me and Aaron called My Fantasy Fest Story. So the idea is to get people talking because everybody's got a wonderful story. Anyways, I'm not going to steal away her thunder. I love her. She was sick as a dog today, but she said, you know, baby, the show must go on. Gwen Filosa.
Don't worry, I'm a lesbian. I can fix things. Moving shit around. Moving stuff around. I'm going to put this here. Move this up. Thanks, Richie. That was a great story. Huh? It was so great, Richie. Now I can't tell my smuggling story. My drug smuggling days was so good. All right. Oh, I'll be over it. So, it changed my life. That's the theme tonight, right? It changed my life. So my dog died last year. That's how you quiet a room. My dog died April 21st, 2021. His name was Pedro. He was 13 years old. He's a big dog, too. Not one of your little fake dogs that you carry around Key West. He's a real dog. He was a black dog. He had an oddly small head for his body, skinny legs, long tail, big eyes. He was a poorly bred pit bull, the vet told me. To every landlord, he was a black lab. We had some pit cred, though. Some pit cred. Now, I know this is awful, and people don't want to talk about it, and it's scary, and it makes you sad, but it changed my life. The death. I mean, I've had some loss. I've been lucky. I've never had that kind of grief. This was gut-punching grief. I was in shock for a few weeks. I didn't go to the gym for like 6 months. Don't do that. You lose all your gains. Couldn't eat. I lost weight, but not in a good way. It was every day I looked for him. I'd get out of bed and look for him because I stepped on that dog every day for 13 years getting out of bed. I know, he's fine. I lost him, and it changed my life. Well, let's start from the beginning. New Orleans, Louisiana. You heard of it. I met Pedro. He was 3 months old, and I was 3 months sober from booze and stimulants that let you drink more booze. It's cocaine, get it? It's funny. It's funny when it's a euphemism. A lot of blow, Richie. I met him. I met Pedro at a coffee shop where I was hanging out with my sober friends. You know what that means. And he was sitting there, a big bundle of puppy, just all ears. You know when dogs don't grow into their faces. And I walked over to this guy with Pedro, and I said, can I have your dog? And he was like, actually, we're trying to get him a home. I said, this would be great. Landlord said no dogs. I did it anyway. Early sobriety is not about rule following. And took him home. Now, he has a really rough childhood story. They rescued that dog. I mean, really rescued. He was found in a barn in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana. They were like, we think his fur will grow back. I was like, what happened to my dog? He had scabies and mange, and they poured money into him, gave him to me for $40. He's a good boy. So I took him home. I didn't know anything about raising a dog. I'd never had a dog before. Not my own dog. Always wanted one. Turns out he didn't know anything about being raised either, so it worked out. I got a crate. He was housebroken. I bought 3 bags of toys and the really expensive dog food. And we had a great time. He taught me a lot. The sober people said, he'll teach you a lot about living in the moment. He doesn't live in the past or he lives in the moment. He loves his life. You're his whole world. Live in the moment, Gwen. And they do. They live in the moment. That's why fireworks were terrifying for him. His whole moment, every moment was, anyway. We tried everything too. Don't pull that thunder shirt thing. Melatonin. We tried everything. I'm just sitting there going, deal with it. But we lived in New Orleans. We played on the levee. He swam in the Mississippi River. Sorry, dog. He had friends. He loved everybody. He had a big smile. He loved everyone. I mean, he was so happy. He was the happiest dog. And yeah, we took care of each other. And we got sober together. He had a little bit more time than me. Never failed to mention that. We went through everything together. There were great times, but there were also rough times. I was unemployed for a series of months due to myself. And a series of bad relationships. He never said, I told you so, but I could sense it. He was good about it. He was like, oh, you'll meet someone. And he was a good boy. And we moved here not knowing a soul. We just got in the Corolla and drove to Key West. Who does that? Turns out all of you. We moved to Key West. He loved Key West. My dad would call me and go, your dog lives in Key West? I said, yeah, he's living better than most children in Florida, but that's not my fault. He's like, your dog. We go on road trips. I took him everywhere. We went to Savannah. We went to Miami. We went back to New Orleans, Georgia. He once stayed at a dog resort in Davie that was nicer than my Hilton. Okay, I was like, what? Anyway, he had a great time. He taught me so many things. He taught me loyalty. He taught me to live in the moment. He taught me about enjoying life. I never knew how to enjoy life without stimulants. I never knew how to just relax and enjoy people and family and good simple things. So yeah, it changed my life having that dog. And yeah, April 21st, 2021 was brutal. My friends were so great. Turns out everyone I know has been through this. Everyone. I wasn't alone. I put out the cry for help on Facebook. I was just like, I don't know what to do. And people were like, you'll be okay. He'll always be with you. But it's going to hurt like hell for the next maybe 6 months. And it did. It hurt. But I started realizing the gratitude, all that he gave me. And you know what really changed my life? It wasn't the grief. The grief's not going anywhere, not for me. My friend calls grief a terrorist. Says you never know when it's going to come at you. The grief is awful, but I've learned gratitude through that grief. What really changed my life was I realized recently that dog taught me how to open my heart. It taught me how to give and receive love. People like me don't do that. I'd rather stay away, make a joke, run over here, act like I don't care, because then I can't get hurt. But with this dog, I learned to open my heart and let somebody in. It was amazing. And you know, when I think about him every day, I smile now. It don't always hurt. Sometimes I smile. Someone gave me a picture of him in a frame for Christmas, and I'm smiling on Christmas Eve. It's my dad dog. Some people were weird. A couple of people I ran into were like, so, Gwen, you gonna get a new dog? And I was like, I don't know. Are you going to get a new grandma? It's the same thing. They weren't really my friends, so fuck them. And but it taught me to open my heart and that there is love, unconditional love. If I let it in, if I am brave enough to let it in and trust in a power greater than myself, that I'll be okay. And I am okay, and I have been okay. And when I think about him every day, you know what I think about? I do it all over again. Thank you.
Gwen, I just want to say, Gwen, I got a new husband. So a new dog could happen. So Gwen, did your paper win a Pulitzer Prize for reporting on Katrina? Her paper in New Orleans won a Pulitzer Prize for their reporting on Katrina. I just want to say, awesome. So we're going to take a break now. You got to pee, you got to like blow your nose, you got to get a drink, whatever. And we got some great stories coming. And so, yeah, take a little break.
And thank everybody. And how do you like it so far? I said, thank you, Cuzzy. Hey, by the way, I used to date a girl who was best friends with Pots and Pan's sister. And here's the story, and you can tell me. Pots and Pan's mama used to keep jars full of quarters and nickels and dimes, right? And back then, you know, if you have 4 quarters, man, you have bread and café con leche. You were living. Actually, Nathan will tell you, if you had $1.25, you can go to Eddie's Lunch and they get rice, beans, bread, plantains, and then also get a Jewfish steak this big. But that's another story. Well, let's not go about the turtle steak. Okay. So what I want to do, and I said I wasn't going to do a big introduction because I don't want to steal his thunder away. I just want to say he's my brother in many, many ways, and I'm eternally grateful for having had the opportunity to share the dais with him and try to move this city in the right direction. My brother Clayton Lopez.
There he is.
Oh. What's up? Well, first I want to thank Tony for doing this and everybody that's a part of this. I want to thank you guys all for being here as well. It's true that the greatest part of my life has been in defending the rights to gain the rights of others and all the rest of that stuff, be they groups I identify with or groups that you may identify with. Injustice is injustice everywhere. We're supposed to tell you about stories that changed or contained life-changing events in our lives. I got a few of them too, but if I'm invited to talk on another panel, on a future panel, I might go ahead and do that. But para la Cucaracha Chronicles, I would love to share some of those with you at some point. But being aware that we're in Women's History Month and my love of our local history, I decided that I wanted to tell you about a local woman, born and raised here in Key West. And there are a lot of women who have had significant and positive impact on me. I'm one of those kids that it truly did take a village. I'm thankful for all of them. But there is one woman who not only changed my life, in fact, much of whatever good there is in me is because of her. She gave me life, then taught me about life. This woman is a woman who went back to full high school after having had a child in her senior year. This was during an era of separate but equal, which it never was. This was an era of segregation. It was an era of when a young woman had a child, it was unheard of that she would go back and complete her education. But this young woman, she went back to school, graduated with honors in her class, and got married to her forever love shortly after graduation. Although he had children from a previous marriage, the two of them together raised 3 boys and a girl. When our eldest 2 kids reached their teen years, this woman decided it was time for her to go back to school. She enrolled at Monroe County Junior College, got her associate degree, and was able to work for the Monroe County school system as a teacher's aide. She was selected to be a Title I aide, working with English as a second language students at Truman Elementary School. She went on to become the first computer proctor at Glen Archer Elementary. And that was at the introduction of computer learning in Monroe County Public Schools. She was on the inaugural board of the Memorial Sculpture Garden at Mallory Square and one of the original HARC members. That was back when it was first started. It was called the Historic Architectural Review Board. There's so many notable accomplishments that I'm leaving out because of time. I've always known her as a strong woman from whom I've learned many lessons. But the one thing that changed the way that I looked at her and eventually changed my life came 2 years after my father died in 1995. Yes, it wasn't until then that I saw her begin to age. But as a strong woman of faith, she struggled through that. But I didn't know how strong her faith was until 1997. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. She went through all of the tests with some obvious concern, then came to the confirmation that only mastectomy could save her life. Admittedly, I was so very afraid. Like many of you, I had heard the horror stories. And even though this cause of morbidity was one of my objectives when I first started working with the public health system in Monroe County, I never saw it as something that would be coming home. Then comes the day of surgery. There was so much prayer as they rolled the gurney past the family and friends gathered at the hospital. Y'all know how we do that, or we did do that before COVID. I believe it was my brother Calvin who led us in prayer. Although we did our best to make sure she didn't see us, we were all in tears. Then I looked at her. She had a calm, a peace that I had never seen, even in her. There's an old gospel song that goes, "And there by faith I received my sight, and now I'm happy all the day." That's what it felt like. That's what that moment felt like. That's what I saw in my mother, Roosevelt Sands and Wilhelmina Sands' youngest child. A woman who told a restaurateur that he could keep his food when all she wanted was some burgers for her 3 young sons. My sister Mina hadn't been born at that time yet. And they told her she could pay up front, but that she had to go to the back to get her food. She showed me her strength that day. And even though I didn't know exactly why, I was proud of my mom. But that story paled in my heart and memory to that moment when, just before I kissed her and I looked in her eyes, and as they took her in for her prep. The true life-changing event for me came much then as they rolled her into the surgery room. So that's when I realized that there is always hope, and there's some strength that you have to dig down into when you face some of your toughest challenges. I believe that some of that strength that I've gained, that I've been able to carry on myself, and not that I'm all that, but I know that a lot of the reason I'm still here is because I've been able to witness what true strength, what true faith, what true trust is. By the way, I was that first baby, and then came Calvin, Carlton, and Mina. Yeah, it was a life-changing event. And yes, she was the strongest woman I ever knew.
Thank you, Clayton. That was really wonderful. Yay.
Tommy, just raise this.
I wanted to be like Gwen and move everything.
All right, go ahead.
Well, Tommy is next.
You're not telling a dog story, are you?
Tommy's doing 9/11, New York Fire Department, because he was.
Yes.
And courage. Okay.
Thank you. So I too was a shy Cuban boy. And then one day at band camp. No, well, just a little background. My story started in Brooklyn, New York. In 1959, I was born. I was born to Irish immigrants to the country. So I'm first generation American. I grew up Irish Catholic. I did everything an Irish Catholic boy should do. Went to high school, went into the Army, got married, became a firefighter, did it all, and then I came out. So everything changed at that. So we'll lead up to 9/11, but my coming out story is important to the 9/11 story. So when I did come out, I had gone through a really nasty divorce. And get to the other side of it, realized, which I had known my whole life, that I was different and that I was a gay man. So I was in the Gay Pride Parade in New York City in 1998. And anybody that's been there, you know it's a huge event. I was marching down Fifth Avenue, and all I had on was a blue FDNY t-shirt. But I knew I was heading towards the public library on Fifth Avenue, and I knew I could see all the media was out. That's where they were stationed, and they were out there with the microphones talking to people. And I knew 2 blocks away that this was my moment. Was I going to come out, or was I going to stay in the closet? And I was thinking of for that 2-block walk, I had to put everything through my head, like a computer. Was I going to come out? Was I going to be true to myself? And I thought it was so important. Here I was, a New York City firefighter, and we were such role models to kids all around the world. And here I was being out. I had children at the time. I had 3 children. I was being true to them, telling them who I was. And I needed to be true to myself and to everybody. So there I was, got in front of the public library. Boom. Microphone was put in front of my face. And the woman reporter said, "Why are you marching?" And I said, "Because I'm a gay man." Yeah, that was good, but it was on fucking 5, 6, and 11. Every station in New York. And it went, and there's a joke in the fire department that, you know, tell a firefighter, telegraph. It goes around like wildfire. At the time, I had about 15 years on the job, and I thought I was pretty well established. I found out who my friends are really quickly, and there weren't many of them. So, but that was okay. You know, I was born a big guy. I have big shoulders. I could shoulder that burden. But fast forward then 3 years later, and the world had an event that we've not seen before. 9/11 happened. So I was not working that day. I should have been working, but I was off, and I had, as many people did, but that was back, even as weird as it sounds, like a couple of people have said, like, there wasn't even cell phones then. We weren't, you know, none of that was, we had computers, but I remember waking up that morning. It was a beautiful September morning. Turn my computer on. It takes a few minutes to get up. I'm doing stuff in the house. Gets up, someone tells me, turn on the TV and look at the news. I look at the news, and it goes on. Without going into all the detail, we've all seen all the pictures and all of that. I would like to tell the story of my connection with Michael Judge, who was the fire department chaplain and the Catholic priest who died that day. He when we went down there that day, it's hard to visualize, and because you've all seen the pictures and the TV of it, but it doesn't do it justice. What we saw with our eyes is not what you saw in pictures. It's just, you just can't explain that. It was just, when we were down in that area of Lower Manhattan, which was a live, vivid place, that morning when we got there, it was like the entire area was dead. There was no color to be seen. There was nothing that you could visually see that made sense to you. I've described it in the past as it looked like an evil ticker tape parade. I got there just after the second, about 45 minutes to maybe an hour at the most after the second building had collapsed. So it was nothing but this dust in the air and papers flying, and it just was, like I said, indescribable. When we got to the point where Michael Judge was laid out, he was in one of the oldest Catholic churches is in that neighborhood there in New York, and we were making our way around it, and with a group of about 7 or 8 other firefighters, and we were just on the missions that we were assigned to try and put out fires, try and find people, etc. And we got in front of the church there, and someone said to us, "Oh, the chaplain's in there." And I was like, "Makes sense. That's where the chaplain should be, in the church." And they said, "No, he's dead." So that immediately sent the message to me how bad the day was going to be if the priest was dead. So we decided at that point that we were just walking and trying to find stuff to do. We went inside the church, and at that moment we walked into the church. It was so vivid. It was so incredibly peaceful and beautiful, because, as I said, outside of the church was dark and gray and like trees. Like anybody that was here with an Irma hit and a big pine, and there was no green left anymore. That's what it looked like there. There was no color to be seen. But we walked into this church, and the light was coming through the stained glass, and it was just magnificent looking. And there was, all you saw was there was a couple other footsteps walking up to the altar, and there laid out was Michael Judge with his, sometimes it's very hard to talk about, but he was laid out there with a white sheet over him, which was pure white. It was just such a pure white. He had his religious stole on his chest, his badge, his ID, and his helmet. And there was just, you saw a little blood, on one side, but it was just, again, it was just, everything was so vivid because there was no color outside there. So we just really did a quick prayer, and then we left on and went on our journey. Fast forward a couple days later, it gets to that Saturday morning, and it was to be his funeral. He was the first, technically the first assigned person who died that day, and his was the first funeral. So that morning I got up, and it was the first time putting a dress uniform on, and I go downstairs and I'm gonna grab a coffee and donut, and because firefighters eat donuts too. So I went down there, and there's the headlines in the paper of Jerry Falwell and Pat Robinson blaming the events of 9/11 on gays and lesbians. And I know Gwen said we're pretty powerful, but we're not that powerful. But it really pushed me over the edge of at that, I hadn't released any anger up to that point. And I was furious, and I just, guys were telling me to calm down, it's nothing. So I went upstairs and I got dressed, and I walked over to where the church was, where the funeral was to take place. And the firehouse next to ours was in charge of being the pallbearers and everything for the church. And I was standing there in the front row, and his casket was brought out of the church, and they went down the street, and they turned around, and they started coming back. And as they were coming back, one of the firefighters, the whole casket, it was faltering. Something happened. Someone couldn't do it. It just, and all I heard was, "Jump out, jump out." So I jumped out. The other guy stepped away. Suddenly, I was Michael Judge's pallbearer. And for those who don't know, Michael Judge was also a gay man. And he was also very proud of that, but he was very private about that as well. So here I was, and this was like, kind of blew my mind when it was happening, because I was carrying him into his church for his, it was his final journey. And I was the gay man that was doing it. So really, as much as it changed everybody's life, that changed my life incredibly. I couldn't be more proud to have carried him through his final journey. It is, like I said, it's hard sometimes to talk about. I was just talking over there with Becky before a couple of minutes ago, and I think for many of us, tragic events and death are a changing point for us. But as sad and as hard as 9/11 was, it opened up doors for me that I didn't know that I had to walk through. At the time, I was the only out gay firefighter in New York City. There was a lot more of us, but I was the only one. So it was thrust on me to be the spokesperson for the gay community at the time. So I did open doors. I did go over to New Jersey, and I was the lead witness to, before the legislature there, to get domestic partnership passed for New Jersey, and it was passed. I got to do a TV show with Rosie O'Donnell and Linda Ellaby on Nick at Night, which was very cool to do. It also became a bit of a burden because it was very hard. I spent my days either working or going to funerals, and my nights at these extravagant fundraising events that I was being honored at, which I was very honored to be at, but the brain could not handle that after a while. You couldn't keep doing the same things. It was like, you know, at a certain point I had to stop going to the funerals. I had to stop going to these events because I just couldn't do it anymore. You know, and it just was very, very hard. But it did make me grateful. I'm grateful for life. As Rita said, you know, like, you don't know what's coming. Every day is a different day. I try, you know, after about a week into 9/11, suddenly packages started showing up at the firehouses by the truckload. People from all over the world sent us stuff. Kids sent us beautiful little mementos. I got a shoebox at home that a kid made me that I treasure because it means so much that this kid sent me something. And, you know, I had like this little juice box in it and a pair of gloves and, you know, just simple things. Socks. At the time, socks meant so much because who knew we'd run out of socks? But, you know, there was things like that, it made me grateful for what was given to me. Like, life was given to me. I didn't die that day. The odds were against me, but I didn't die that day, and I'm here, and I've been able to do a lot of different things. I've been knocked down a lot. I got hit bad by Irma. I'm still here. I've got hit bad by a lot of other things in life, you know, family members that have passed away, dogs that have died. I've, you know, life is not easy. It's not an easy ride. And but it's a beautiful ride. And I hope that everybody enjoys it and everybody has a different story to tell. We all wear so many different hats in life. All the different things we do, that we just need to keep doing that and enjoying ourselves. And I try to give back all the time. Even when the pandemic hit up in Big Pine, we had so many people that just instantly needed help and they needed food. And my husband and I we helped other friends, Lisa and Gino, if anybody knows them from up there. We feed people. We started feeding people immediately. At one point, I had, I think, nine or 10 turkeys cooking at one time in my house and under the house, and hams and everything else. And it's just, life is about giving back. It really is. And the more we give back, the better we live, the better we enjoy ourselves. So, and we are in Florida, so I can't sit up here and say, gay, 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 gay.
I mean, see what I'm saying? You got stories, man. You just got to get out and say them. I want to say this really quick. I love this man so much, him and his husband, John. And, you know, openly gay firefighter in New York City. Are you kidding me? And also did a real hard run for a county commission a while back. And damn it, I wish he would do it again. No. You. Well, we'll have somebody come up. Have somebody come up. Have Michelle come up.
So I really apologize to whomever's going to have to follow that. Put your names in the hat, and I'm going to pull it out right now. Bonnie. Yeah, way. I swear, it's in my hand right now. Come on, Bonnie. What changed your life?
Hi, everybody. So listen, I get a little... I didn't have time to prepare, obviously, but they say put your name in a hat and get up on a stage. How can I resist? So the day that changed my life, it was hot. It was really hot. It was sweltering. I was sleeping, just waking up from my evening sleep. It was so hot, I had to get up. So took my mask off, took my earplugs out, silently crawled out of the tent so not to wake my sleeping husband. Music is pumping. You can hear the bass. It's not even 6:30 in the morning, okay? It's pumping. I wander out and I decide I'm gonna go for a bike ride. This is a time in my life when I haven't done a lot of things by myself or on my own. It's 2017, late September, and I'm at Burning Man in Reno, Nevada. So I jump on my bike and I start riding. And there's a place at Burning Man called Center Camp. It's a huge circus tent. You can go there, you can see scantily clad people walking around, crazy decorated people with braids, rainbow braids down their hair or down their body. So I go to Center Camp and I get a coffee. And I take a seat and I decide I'm just gonna watch people for a little bit by myself. So I sit there, just taking it all in. And a gentleman approaches me and he says, "Can I share this seat?" "Sure, of course, come sit down." So we sit and I say, "Tell me about you." And he sits and he tells me that he's stage 4 cancer. He's facing some very serious things in life. And he's there at that event to learn more about himself. That's a pretty deep thing for a stranger to share with you. And after we chat for a little bit, he turns to me and he says, "What about you?" In that moment, I didn't think somebody was going to be asking anything about me, but after he shared something so deeply emotional, something opened up in me and I looked at him and I said, "Things just aren't right. I feel unsettled. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't feel right." He didn't have the answers, but he sat with me. And he gave me presents, and it really felt good. So we parted ways. I jumped back on my bike, and I'm deeply confused at this point. I have no idea what's going on inside of me. I got shook up. And I decided to head back to my camp. So I'm riding, and something catches my attention. I hear chanting. I hear sounds. There's another big tent that's enclosed. I can't see what's going on inside of it, but I'm curious. Now, I just want to take a second and tell you a little bit about Burning Man. My husband and I are going this year, and we're hosting our own camp. And in the placement questionnaire, they ask you to describe your camp, and they say, what are you going to do that's going to make people stop and get off their bikes? So here I am riding on my bike, And something makes me stop and throw my bike. And I'm so curious, and I walk into this tent, and I part the doors of the circus tent. And there, on the floor, are probably 150 people sitting cross-legged. On the stage is this woman in a princess gown like you see at Disney World. Big bosoms, big hair. And she's instructing this crowd to tap. Tap and chant. So I walk in, mosey through some people, and I find my seat. You know, I'm here for an experience. So I just start doing what everybody else is doing, and I start tapping. And I start repeating. I release preconditioned ideas. I release the things that society has told me. I am not what my parents made me be. I am myself. I'm free to be myself. I'm free to express my sexuality how I need to, how I want to. At this point, a few minutes into this, I have people rubbing my back, giving me water to drink, because I've apparently lost my shit at this point. Oh. So at the end of that experience, I walked out, I got on my bike, and I rode back to camp, and let me tell you something. My life was different from that point forward. Thank you for the opportunity.
I guess I better decide what I'm going to say now, huh? Tony, where's Tony? Where's Tony? You know, I'm so grateful I didn't have to follow Tommy. But thanks for putting me at the end.
Always been the caboose of my heart.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, I wasn't sure what I was going to say. I've been struggling with what I might share here because it's kind of personal, and I'm usually at the church, and I have a nice pulpit all around me, and I have a robe on, so I have layers of protection when I talk to people, but not tonight. So a little bit about me. I'm actually a little Italian boy from Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, where the bluest skies you've ever seen are in Seattle. And I grew up there for the most part, and I studied to be a Jesuit there, and so I went through school and was a Jesuit and was with all the guys, you know, the Jesuit priests that are kind of like to party a little bit, and was going through the 17-year process to be, you know, fully ordained a Jesuit. It's not just a quick little program. So, you know, I'm getting towards the 17 mark. And I had some issues with the church in their stance, quite honestly, with how they were protecting priests and finding some firsthand knowledge of what was going on and how they were protecting them. And so I decided to make a life change, and I decided to leave the Jesuits and proceeded to go to another church. Because when I was a kid, as far as back as I can remember, I always wanted to, I knew I was supposed to be some kind of minister, priest, something like that, but I always wanted to be a cop. I always wanted to be a policeman. So I went to another church. I learned their ways, and I transferred out here to Key West. There was this little church called Metropolitan Community Church here in Key West. Met at the Women's Club. It had 12 members. They never told me it had 12 members. They never told me they had no money. They never told me they had no plan. And they never told me they had a slight negative history. So here I am, 37 years ago, not really knowing what to do or how to do it. So I get to the church and we start doing it, and we decide that I decided that to be in a real church, you needed to be in a real church. So we did some things and grew the church and purchased the church over on Petronia Street. One of the other things that was going along at the same time was this little, I think they called it a pandemic back then. This little thing called AIDS. Now, in Seattle, we were getting to know what AIDS was kind of about, and my friends were dying quite rapidly, and I was thinking, am I next? I should be next. There is absolutely no reason on God's green earth that I am not positive and on my way to the next life. But for whatever reason, I never was positive. So I get to Key West. I'm learning very quickly. My first day here is I'm at the hospital, and they're telling me, well, you know, the hospital is full of AIDS patients and they're dying. When can you start visiting? So that was my introduction to Key West and AIDS, and every day we were at the hospital. I was at the hospital, and I had my lunch there and many of my dinners there for quite some time. Everybody that I knew and was getting close to were getting sick and dying. People who have been here a long time know that when you go down to the AIDS memorial, all those names that you knew, at one point I knew 99% of those people. That's what changed my life. The it was AIDS. I learned a lot of things then. I learned how life is so precious, and how some people make it and some people don't. And that it doesn't necessarily matter how strong you are. Sometimes, you know, you're just going to transcend to the next level. And so I have a lot of little stories that I could share, but I'm not going to. But the it was AIDS, and taught me appreciation of life and people, and different opinions, quite honestly, because back then there were a lot of different opinions. Quickly, because I know I only have a limited amount of time, and I'm a preacher and I can talk forever and say nothing. Ask anybody who's been to church. I always wanted to be a police officer, and Key West afforded me the ability to do that. I went to the police academy here. They did everything they could to wash me out. Absolutely they did. Absolutely. They had meetings on how they were going to wash me out and how I would be somehow out of the program. And so since I was passing all the tests, imagine that. A Jesuit education, and I'm passing their tests. That came as a shock. Honest to God, it did. So they decided they would get me during defensive tactics. So here I am. I was a lot skinnier then. I was about 150 pounds, and never knew really how to fight, you know. I'm a lover, not a fighter. You know, look at these hands. They're smooth. And so what do? They pair me with this Cuban guy who's like 225, 30 pounds. And that was the point that they were going to hurt me. I was going to get hurt, and that would be my exit out. And that's what I found out. Somehow, we're everywhere. I know we're not allowed to say gay in Florida. But even in the police department, there were queers there. They weren't out. By God, they weren't out. But a little bird told me what they were trying to do. It just happened that the guy, George, his name was George, who was my defensive tactics partner, was having trouble with the tests. So I started to tutor him. So during defensive tactics, he took the hits He took all the hits. He would hold the punch. He made sure that I didn't get hurt. And when it was coming time for the end of that, where, you know, push comes to shove, our wonderful sheriff, Sheriff Roth, came to the school, came into the class, sat in the back, and it was lunchtime, and he said, "Steve, let's go to lunch." You couldn't believe the looks on the people that were in charge's face. They had no idea all along that Sheriff Rick Roth and I were friends. And so I passed. But I want to tell you, I passed on my own accord. I had to show proficiency, and there was a whole panel of people, and by God, they were just really trying to flunk me, but I made it. So I'm so grateful for that. Then I volunteer as a police officer, and then I say I've had enough of this church in 1999, and so I left the church full-time with the police department, and then I went back to the church three times because they were having problems. And then I've been there for 8-9 years now. What is it? It seems like another lifetime. I'm back there. Yes, poor John, my husband. Pastor's wife is not very nice. I retired from the police department after almost 20 years. And for the last 8 or 9 years was pastoring the church and doing full-time at the police department. So I will just tell you, I am so grateful for Key West. It afforded me to do the two things that my heart was set on. One, becoming a police officer, because that's what I wanted to do. And second, being a minister / priest, whatever, because I knew that was what I was called to do. And so I was so grateful to have that opportunity and to serve Key West and to be a part of many of the things that we take for granted now. And that's yet another story. So my time is up, isn't it? Yes. I do want to thank, but no, it's like church. They say yes, but they mean no. Listen, I'm a realist. But thank you so much. I thank you for this opportunity.
I have to tell you that given the lineup, when we first showed it to Aaron and Judd and Elena Devers and stuff, they said, wow. But I got to tell you, tonight, I've been blown away by some of these stories. I've had tears in my eyes. I've laughed so hard, my jaw hurts. And anyways, and my partner in crime, Rita Troxel, I love you. So here's the deal, guys. Are we done? You want to hear any more stories? Trust me, I got a story, but...
He's got many, many stories.
One more? You want to hear about Trash Can Tom or about Aunt Terry, my gay bar manager? Which one? Raise your... Trash Can Tom? Yes. Okay, real quick. So this is... You want to grab it? So this is Key West law. If you'll forgive me, Steve. So I come down to Key West with this girl, and then we're hippies, and we were married, and blah, 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 and we got bored, and she started putting the horns to some guy, and I went to Miami, I took my duffel bag, cried all the way to Miami, went to Mama's house. Mama told me I was great, you're beautiful, right? Mamas do that, right? And so, went to the gym, worked out, and stuff like that. Came back down to Key West, and my wife at the time, Loretta, and I had remained good friends, but now it was different. She was hanging out with this guy, Trash Can Tom, that was his name. And Trash Can had been on disability. He was like 14 or something. He never lifted a finger in his entire life. But they were happy and all that stuff. Not me, man. I was hanging out at the Sands Beach Club with Dee Dee West. Used to make if anybody knows Dee Dee, she used to make my little sling Bahama bananas, whatever the hell they're called. Bahama ham. And so I was happy. She was happy. But we were friends for life. And I come home one day and she has a black eye. And so what the fuck happened? And she says, oh, you know, trash can Tom. So I said, fuck this, man. The Cuban went up in me, and I got on my bicycle. And I don't know why. I just got on my bicycle, started riding down, because we had no cars back then. We had bicycles. And I started pedaling down White Street, all pissed off. And I'm telling you, Providence is an amazing thing. Coming out of Fausto's, I'm sorry, back then it was Gulfstream. Coming out of Gulfstream is Trash Can Tom. And I punched him in the face, knocked the groceries all over Kingdom, come on, beating the shit out of him. And I'm talking to him, because Cubans fight you like that. You motherfucker, you're not good for nothing, right? And I'm beating the shit out of the guy, right? And this cop, the detective off duty, one of the Lastros brothers, they're all dead, wonderful people, says, hey, Fat, if you're kicking this guy's ass, I know he deserves it, but you know what? You hear the sirens? So I leave, right? So anyways, you know, some time goes by, etc., and all of a sudden, one day I come home, and there she is again with a black eye again. I said, fuck this, I'm going to kill this guy, right? And my cousin Sergio says, you know what, cuz? And Sergio's one of them guys, Sergio de la Guerra. I know Richie and them, and Sergio de la Guerra, you guys know him. He was one of those guys, man, that had real deep thought, but he was real slow. He said, cuz, you know, if you kill this guy, man, like, there's no girls in jail. You know, it's not going to be good. So I said, what should I do? He says, go see Carol Key. Now, Carol Key was a 6'8", 375-pound detective of the city of Key West, okay? And I go knock on the door, and he comes out, and when he comes out, it's nighttime. When he comes out, there's no light. He's blocked the whole door, right? And he goes, what do you want, Fat? And I go, man, I'm going to kill this fucking guy. And he goes, oh, what happened? And he goes, no. He said, go home, don't worry about it. So I go home, a couple weeks go by, month goes by, I see Loretta. Hey, how are things? And Tom is a changed man. He's giving me extra stuff for the baby and buying me clothes and razor blades to shave her leg, because for a while she didn't shave her legs. Anyways, so he says, yeah, that's great. So anyways, fast forward 30 years, and I'm at Sandy's Cafe one morning with Robert Lastris, one of the detectives, brother to the other guy. And I start telling him that story, and he starts laughing. And he goes, well, you don't know what happened, right? And I said, no, what happened? He says, well, late that night, Carol Key pulls up to my house with Cuban Santana, the other detective, in the car, and he says, Robert, get in the car, we got to take care of Key West Justice. I said, okay. So he says, we go and knock on Trash Can Tom's door, and when he opens the door, Carol Key punches him, knocks him out, and throws him in the trunk of the police car. We drive out to Boca Chica Road. I open the trunk, and he says to the guy, pulls him out of the trunk, and he goes, you like hitting women? No, you don't understand. He goes, we don't hit women, and you were warned before. So he says, Robert, get the chains out of the trunk. Cuban, get them CVS blocks out of the trunk. So Robert says, well, you know, whatever. So they take the stuff and they wrap the CVS blocks around the guy's ankle. The guy pisses himself, shits himself, right? So Carol Key says, if I let this go, do I have your word that you're going to be a perfect gentleman for here? Fuck yeah, whatever you want, right? So then, anyways, they take him back to the house, end of story, right? So I say to Robert, yeah, Robert, he really bluffed him, huh? And he goes, you know what? To this day, I really thought he wasn't bluffing. He was going to throw the son of a bitch in the ocean, and that was going to be the end of that. Anyways, Key West Justice, and that's the way it was, and we worked it out. I want to take a moment and ask everybody who spoke tonight to come up here for a minute. Please, if you got a minute, come on up. Okay, so I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank studios, particularly Judd and Aaron and Erica and Lawrence, particularly, who set this whole thing up. My superstar, Day. I love you, baby. You guys are the cutest, and Kai, you guys are the cutest couple in Key West. I also want to extend my apologies to my big brother I never had, Nathan Eden. We were going to come up and talk to you a little bit about Ray and what that was all about, but after speaking with him, I think at this point, you know what's going on. So I think we're going to respect Ray's privacy, but I promise you that him and I and Nathan will sit down one day and we'll video his story, and I'm going to tell you something, and I'm going to say it again. When these guys came back from Vietnam, they were not appreciated. Thank God. And my brother Clayton and I, when we were on the commission, Clayton pushed really, really hard on myself for the Vietnam Veterans Wall, and it was right. And I think you need to hear Ray's story, because not only was it a tragedy, but then it was a double tragedy when he came home. So we will sit, Nathan and I, and we will get the story for you. I want to once again thank everybody who's worn any uniform.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you whether it's a blue one, a red one, whatever. And I will tell you this: anyone, and I'm a left-wing liberal dove, but I will tell you something: anyone that's been willing to put on a uniform and perhaps have to stand in the way of a bullet deserves for our country to make sure there's always a roof on their head, good medical care, and food on their table, and I don't give a shit about anything else. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you everybody. It's been a pleasure and an honor for all of us. And doing what? Are we doing it again? We're doing July. We're doing it again in July, and also the end of October. If you've got a story, contact Fat. The next one is Roots, My Roots, which is an awesome, wide open, could be anything. And if you want Home at the End of the World, Books and Books. Books and Books has them.
72 stories.
72 stories by 51 people. Yes. Fat's stories are in there. It's worth buying the book just for his stories. Okay? Thank you so much. Thank you.